Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm going to talk just a little bit about some of the books that I am hoping to read in the month of November. Multiple readathons, of course, and I'm not going to go over every single prompt. There's a few prompts for the readathons that I haven't picked out a book for yet, and I think what I'm going to do is just kind of talk about the books, and as I remember what prompt they're for, I'll mention those, because I think most of these I know. I'm of course going to link all of the hosts of the readathons that I talk about. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Islamophobia Awareness Month readathon. In the UK, November is Islamophobia Awareness Month, and this has been hosted before, and it is being hosted again by some wonderful people: Hannah from Bellgowns and Books, Nilam from Tsundoku Chronicles, and Afreen from Offreads. I will of course link them below and their announcement posts and everything. So this readathon is obviously about reading books by Muslim authors, and there's a bingo board. There's a lot of great prompts, but like with many readathons, you can also just pick up books by Muslim authors that you want to read. And we didn't plan it this way, but it ended up being perfect timing because the book that Hannah and I are going to be covering for my Not a Genre book club fits in perfectly with the readathon. That is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Khattu. This is a contemporary story with some more, I think, speculative elements because her PTSD, our main character's PTSD, has like a physical form that it takes, but it's very like grounded, it's very contemporary, and it deals with the Syrian revolution. Our main character is a pharmacy student who is torn between wanting to get out and escape and be safe, but then also wanting to stay in this place that she loves and where people are struggling for freedom. I have heard nothing but incredible things about this. I know Hannah loves this book. She like recommended it to me. I'm using it for the Muslim blogger recommends prompt because she put this on my 12 friends list, and also, like I said, we're going to be doing an episode where Hannah leads a discussion on this book. I can't wait. I know it's very emotional, but I have heard just beautiful things about it. I also have A Flash of Fireflies by Aisha Bushby. This is I think this is another kind of like contemporary, but with some speculative elements. This might be considered a fabulist book, I'm not sure. And our main character is named Hazel, and she has OCD that manifests as fireflies that tell her to do things. And I'm using this for the prompt of a book with a main character that you share something with, because I also have OCD. I'm pretty sparing about the books that I read with that representation in it. Like, I think it's super important that they're out there, but I tend to find it very difficult to read that, but this one I feel like I'm going to really get on with. Yeah, I think it's going to be really beautiful. Then I think there's a prompt that is like graphic novel or comic, and so for that one I have Huda F Cares by Huda Fahmy. Actually, this might be for the 2023 release, I'm not sure which one I used it for, but this is a kind of biographical inspired, although this isn't considered a memoir. I read Huda F Are You, which was like the first one in this kind of series, I guess. I read that I think last year and really enjoyed it. I really love Huda Fahmy's humor, and I think she does a great job of just writing like realistic like teens and like people just figuring themselves out. And it does deal with some bigger topics, but it's also just very funny. So I am really looking forward to reading that one. Then I have Much Ado About Nada by Usman Jalaluddin. I still think it is very confusing that this is not a Much Ado About Nothing retelling, although apparently there are some elements that kind of connect to Much Ado About Nothing, but primarily what this is a persuasion retelling. I have really enjoyed one of the other books I read by Usman Jalaluddin. I didn't like her more recent one as much, but I just tend to really enjoy her writing and her stories, and I really love the themes in her books and the way she handles them. So even though in her previous novel I didn't love the romance, I still really enjoyed the book and had a good experience with the book. So I'm curious to see how I get on with this one. But like I said, I think even if I don't love the romance, I feel like I'm still going to really enjoy other things about it. And I'm using this for the Muslim Joy prompt. I also want to read Sunburnt Veils by Sarah Hagdusti. I think this might be by an Australian author, which means it could cross over with the Australian readathon that I'm going to talk about. But for the I Am readathon, I am using this for Hijab on the Cover, and this is a rom-com about, I think it might be Hate to Love. Also, our female main character like is constantly crushing on like the characters in the fantasy books she reads, which I think is very funny and relatable. And I think it's really interesting that Tara, our female lead, she wears hijab even though her parents hate it. I feel like especially in Western media, there's a tendency to portray women wearing hijab, especially like young women, like teenagers or young adults, as being like having that forced on them. And also, I should specify when I say like Western media, I mean like Western media that is made by people who are not Muslim themselves. There tends to be a very negative portrayal of girls and women who wear hijab, and it also tends to be very portrayed in a way that like this is forced on them. And this book makes that clear that that's not the case. So I think that's very cool as well. Yeah, I haven't heard a lot about this one. I think this one I'm also using for the like under 500 Goodreads ratings or something. There's several on this list that I could use for that, and this one is definitely one of them. Then I have one that like, I can't remember which prompt I specifically picked this for, but it kind of doesn't matter because I just want to read this anyway. I have Humra in the Jungle of Memories by Hannah Alkaf, who I absolutely love. I have read several novels by her, several short stories by her. I have loved all of them. And this is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. I'm so excited. Like, I really love this author. I think this is going to be fantastic. I did also hear from Hannah that this book is very much like a COVID book, like that in terms of the setting and everything. So good to know that going in, but I love this author. And then one of the prompts is to read a book by a Palestinian author, and I also have several nonfiction books that I definitely want to read, but a couple of those haven't come in yet. But one of the fiction ones that I definitely am going to get to is Squire by Sarah Al-Faghi and Nadia Shamas, and this is a quite chunky graphic novel that I've heard very good things about. This was one of my anticipated releases, so I'm really glad that I'm finally going to be reading it. And I think it's about like our main character who has like dreamed of getting into this kind of elite, like kind of training or something like that, like kind of like an elite branch of the military, I think. And then when she gets there, she starts learning more about the colonization of her land and trying to decide if she's willing to accept like success within this system. And I've heard like great things about it. I think I'm gonna really like the art. So yeah, and I think this also, like, even though this is, I think, a fantasy story, I think it is very much informed by the author being Palestinian. So I think it's gonna be a good one to read for that prompt as well. So those are some of the books that I want to read that are by Muslim authors. Of course, I will probably be picking up other things by Muslim authors throughout the month, but this is a pretty good stack to be getting on with. I'm also going to be participating in Historathon, which there's a couple different readathons named that. This is the one that is historical fiction, not historical nonfiction. I love historical fiction, so I'm excited that they're doing another round. It's Amanda from On the Middle Shelf, Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library, and Gloria Z. Thompson. Each of them came up with 3 different prompts, and kind of the goal for this readathon, or kind of the suggestion, is that in this round you pick one prompt from each of the lists, but also you can feel free to ignore that. Like, very chill rules, like with many readathons. And this stack that I have here, there's quite a few of these books that I could count for multiple things, so I could kind of just decide what I want to count them for. One of the prompts is reading a book that is set in a place that you either have visited or that you want to visit. And so I picked up the, is this the 5th or 6th book? The 6th book in the Enola Holmes series, Enola Holmes and the Case of the Disappearing Duchess. I just bought this recently. I held off on buying this one for a long time because the original title used a word that we now recognize as offensive to Romani people. That was part of the title, and I held off on buying it because I was figuring that eventually they would do like a new title, like a new cover, especially with the films coming out on Netflix, and that is what happened. I'm glad I waited, and I'm glad that they did that. So they do like mention what the previous title was on the cover, so that if you have the old edition, you know it's the same book. But I think they handled that very well. So I'm really excited to continue. I've been really enjoying this series, and I should mention this one is set in London, and I have been to London. One of the prompts is to read a book set in your favorite time period to read about, and I have like a lot of different time periods, and again, this is one where I could pick from any number of books. So one option is Regency. It's definitely an oversaturated part of historical fiction, but I do really enjoy some of the Regency books I read. Obviously not all of them, but there's been some that I really love. So I decided to pick it for this prompt. One of them I've had for quite a while now. It's My Fair Gentleman by Nancy Campbell Allen. This is a proper romance, and it is a gender-swapped My Fair Lady retelling, which I feel like I could really enjoy. I don't know. I'm hopeful. We'll see. I have enjoyed other things that I've read by this author, but I am a little nervous about the My Fair Lady thing because I think that's a story that, I don't know, basing a romance off of that plot line, I think could go either way for me, but hopefully I'll enjoy it. Or my other one that I have is another anticipated release, An Improbable Season by Rosalind Eves. This follows 3 women who are either really good friends or like sisters or cousins or something, and they're all in London for the season. One of them, she wants to actually like participate in the season. She's excited. She wants to find somebody that she cares about and get married. One of them is in town to, I think, like work on like scientific papers or something, and I think one of them is there to work on like publishing her poetry like anonymously or something. Yes, yeah, one of them is a poet. And then when they get there, things get kind of mixed up. Like, one of the girls who did not plan to fall in love, of course, does. I love that the one who's really into science finds herself an unexpected social hit. I think that sounds super fun and unfortunately very rare for historical fiction books like this. Like, I feel like a lot of books that are historical and that have a kind of science girl main character, I think that a lot of times they can be very like not like other girls, and also just very like one note, like as if like if you're an intelligent woman or a woman who is interested in science, that like you can never ever enjoy anything else. I don't know. I find that frustrating and weird, so I'm very excited that this book I think does not do that. Also, I love me a female friendship. We know this. Then for, I think this is the one, yeah, this is the prompt where you have to read a book that has a color in the title, which was very difficult. I did not realize how difficult this was going to be, but I picked Black Rabbit Hall by Eve Chase. This looks like it's a movie tie-in cover possibly, but I actually really like this one. I think it's pretty. This is, I guess, I don't know if technically you'd call this historical fiction. I think it's more like a historical mystery or thriller, but I'm counting it. And it is dual timeline, which is not my favorite thing. But my friend Margaret from The Word Nerd, I remember her really enjoying this one and recommending it. And the things that she said about it just really interested me. And even though I'm not like a big thriller person, I have been finding more mysteries that I really enjoy. And I just really like that this has a historical element. Yeah, so I'm excited. Then I have one that is for the 5-star TBR prediction, or like a book, basically a book that you think you'll give 5 stars. I have Longbow Girl by Linda Davies. You guys know I love a time slip historical fiction, which is what this is. Our young character is a girl who is from the modern day, and she's a really amazing archer. She's very good at archery, and she ends up getting transported back in time to the court of Henry VIII and trying to stop history from happening in a certain way, which I am already ready to be emo about this. I think it's Henry VIII. I can't see now in the description, but yeah, I'm really hoping that this is going to be a 5-star for me. I've never read anything by this author. I've heard very few people, if anybody, talk about this book, but I just have a good feeling about it. So hopefully that's justified. Then I have The Last Heir to Blackwood Library by Hester Fox. This is one I'm using for the prompt of like recommended by a favorite, because Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany has really recommended Hester Fox's books just in general, and I obviously really love her content. And yeah, I think I'm gonna like this one. This one is like very atmospheric. I think it takes place in post-World War I England, which I think that World War I historical fiction, like that era, is really interesting. There's like a mysterious library. This like young woman ends up being like left this library when she doesn't expect it. Yeah, I think it's going to be like the right amount of creepy, and I know that Hester Fox also tends to do like big romance elements in her books, so I'm hoping I enjoy that as well. And then I think one of the prompts is based on a true story, or like includes elements from a true story. I think that's the one that I picked this book for. I have Incantation by Alice Hoffman. Unless I'm misremembering, I still don't think I've read anything by Alice Hoffman, which as a person who loves historical fiction, I feel like is a crime, because she is very well loved in historical fiction circles, and I've owned this book for quite a while. It's also a very short one, so I feel like it would be a good readathon pick, and I do think it sounds really, really interesting, obviously, or I wouldn't have gotten it. So this is set in Spain during the Spanish Inquisition, and our main character is a young woman who is one of the, I think conversos was the name, where they were forced to convert to Christianity. Jewish people were forced to convert to Christianity, and if they didn't, they could be killed or like evicted, you know, their belongings and everything destroyed. So some Jewish families did go along with that because they had no option. And I believe our main character is one of those, but who secretly still practices her faith. So yeah, I think this is going to be obviously very intense and heavy, but like I said, I've just heard really fantastic things about Alice Hoffman, and I think I remember reading somewhere that this was partly based on like her family, so that's why I'm using it for this prompt. Okay, I think those are the historical books, and now I'm just going to talk very briefly about a few books by Australian authors that I want to read. I first heard about this readathon from Mel at a book fiend named Mel. I will link her and the other hosts down below. Okay, sorry if things look a little different. I had to change my camera battery, but I just have very few books I want to talk about. I feel like this is going to be a very long TBR again, so apologies for that. Looking for Ella Brandi by Melina Marchetta. She's an author who I've read one of her contemporaries, which I loved. I've read her Lumentera Chronicles, which is a fantasy trilogy, which I loved, and I just haven't read something by her in way too long. And she's of course an Australian author. All of these are going to be that I talk about here, and I don't know much about this one except that I think there is a love triangle, and I also think that our main character is like trying to find out more about her father. like her birth father, who she doesn't know anything about. I don't really need to know that much because like I've loved everything I've read by Melina Marchetta. So then I remember one of the prompts is read a book that is indie or self-published, which I love, and actually several of the indie fantasy authors that I've been really enjoying happen to be Australian, so this works out great. I have Have Spirit, Will Duchess by Tansy Rayner Roberts. This is a companion book, but it's set, I think it's set sequentially in the Teacup Magic series, which I have been loving, and this one follows a character that we know about from other stories in the series who I really love, so I'm very excited to follow her exclusively here. Then I have The Hotel Witch by Jessica Miller, which just has the most adorable cover. I love that. And I'm like bending the rules for this prompt a little bit because one of them is read a host favorite, and there's like a graphic that has like the host favorites. This is not on there, but I am counting it as like a host recommendation because Mel actually did a video where she recommended books to different booktubers, and the one that she recommended to me is The Hotel Witch, which I obviously bought it because it does sound like exactly my thing. I think this is going to be a really lovely kind of whimsical story. Our main character lives at this big hotel and there's magic. I think it sounds great. I don't remember for these last two if I had specific prompts. These are kind of just books by Australian authors that I really want to read this month. One of them is Please Don't Hug Me by Kay Kerr, and this Kay Kerr is an autistic author, and I think I heard about her from Annalisa Ely, I think. I've just heard like very, very good things about her books, and I actually have this one and one other one by her. And so our main character in this book, like, she starts writing letters to her brother who disappeared a few years ago as a way to kind of process some of the things that she's going through, and that's all I really know about it. Yeah, I think this is going to be really emotional and really good. Like, I've just heard really great things about her books. And then finally I have Masquerade by Kylie Fornacier. This is a historical fantasy, I think fantasy, set in Venice, which I love a good Italian-inspired fantasy. I think there's a lot of like court politics and like complicated relationships. I just feel like I'm gonna really enjoy this one. I've had it on my TBR for ages, and then I finally just bought a copy recently, so I feel like it's a great time to read it. Okay, so I think those are finally all the books that I wanted to chat about. I think I'm probably gonna do sort of a like currently reading check-in midway through the month where I talk a little bit about some of the books by native authors and some of my nonfiction November books I want to get to, because that would just be way too much to include in this one video. But yeah, those are definitely other focuses that I want to have during the month. And yeah, let me know if you have read any of these books. Let me know if you're participating in any of these readathons. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!